This brief video will show you the evolution of my vision for my home flight simulator cockpit. So this was the initial sketch that I created approximately 3 years ago. From there, it was a lot of planning at various levels of detail. So turn that sketch into a Visio diagram, and in order to ensure that everything would be positioned comfortably, I did a 3D rendering to get all my dimensions accurate. From there, filling in the details of what each panel would look like was a Visio project with a tremendous level of detail. Calculating how many switches would be required and how many digital or analog inputs. Once the space was physically ready, I just kind of threw everything into it, and from there it just took shape step by step. That was the build of the gaming computer. This was the chair, which was built from some plans I found online with a couple modifications, but it's basically a laminated plywood assembly. There's the chair after assembly and painting and a couple little finishing touches. Similar process for the front bezel, which is seen cut out here. It's a thin plywood fascia with a little bit of reinforcement behind that. Disassembling the monitors that would be built into that, and at this stage I couldn't help but give it a try and see how the experience was coming along. This is the trackball out of an old Golden Tee machine that became the mouse. It's assembled into one of the panels on my right hand side. That was the first panel that I assembled after the laser printer sent the panels back. Assembly was basically just done one panel at a time, mounting all the switches, and then going to the back side here and soldering it all. It's not nearly as complicated as it kind of looks. It's just very repetitive. Do one switch at a time. I threw all the panels in just to make sure that all the dimensions were checking out, and then continued to add the switches to each one, basically filling in the blanks. This next panel was a demonstration to some of the rotary switches as well, which slowed me down a little bit, but got her done. This is the last panel I built before I convinced myself I needed to integrate displays into the panels. So this is the back of the first display-enabled panel. It's the AM radio. And there's the front side of it with it off, and finally demonstrating a successful display test. So I was really happy with how that turned out as far as the realism it created. Here is all three panels assembled and in the pit. And lastly, this panel required a little bit of custom resin work for that handle. And then on the last day, I actually ended up sewing some dust covers because it would be a couple weeks between flights. So